on my profile on LinkedIn and possibly also on YouTube. Of course, that may just be taking the technology a bit too far. So later on, we'll just find out what's actually happened. But this morning, I'm really pleased to be joined by Alex Platt, who is the absolute goddess of Facebook ads and doing them in a way that actually makes you money. And doesn't just become a massive drain on your business. But I think she's also really good at simplifying it, because I know for lots of people it feels really, really complicated. So first off, Alex, just tell us a little bit about you and how you got to become a Facebook ads guru.
Okay, well, hello everybody. So I started my self-employed journey around nearly 8 years ago now as a virtual assistant. I was made redundant from the NHS, and through working with lots of business owners, it became very apparent that the one thing that everyone struggled with was their marketing. So I very quickly went into social media marketing for people, and through that I then picked up copywriting jobs because people began to trust my writing for their social media, and they wanted me to rewrite their websites and email marketing. So very quickly, I became content marketing. I trained as a copywriter so that I could deliver better results for my clients through the copywriting. And then Facebook ads came along. And that was nearly 5 years ago now. And then when COVID hit and the pandemic, I dropped all of my content marketing services and I just focused solely on Facebook ads. And really, from then on, it's really exploded. And I think a lot more people are using Facebook ads. So it was the perfect time, really, to niche down.
Yes, for sure. So I think we've got some people watching on LinkedIn. We've definitely got at least Chris watching on Facebook. In the Facebook group, I have just popped a link because we're coming to you through some software called Be Live. It means that Facebook won't automatically show us your name. But apparently the link I've shared today doesn't work. So I'll have to sort that out for next time. But I can see Chris, so that's all right. So Alex, I guess the most obvious place to start is with a bit of a sweeping question around what do you see as the biggest challenges that people face with Facebook ads, or, you know, the things they miss or the bits that they do wrong, or, you know, the reasons why their ads aren't working?
Okay, so a lot of people that I speak to for my power hours, which is when people really are struggling with things and so they come to talk to me for a quick fix, tends to really boil down to targeting. So they have got very confused with what to put in the targeting options in the Facebook Ads Manager, and probably haven't done as much work on who their ideal audience is to begin with. So I do a lot of work with people on that, really sort of aligning their audience really with what their business goals are, looking for their ideal paying customer rather than just getting a load of leads who are never going to stay on their email list and won't convert later. So that's a really big thing that I work with a lot of people on. The other thing that I see is people just don't have a strategy. So they feel that they should be doing Facebook ads. They've sort of rushed into doing it and they haven't really taken the first couple of steps before they've done it. So they haven't worked out what goals they're looking to achieve. They haven't really done all the tech associated with their funnel, so they're not tracking their results. And so they don't really know whether things are working or not. So they've missed out a lot of the puzzle and they've just gone straight into the middle to run the ads.
Yeah, and I can see why that happens, because I think, you know, there's lots of comments thrown around about, oh, Facebook ads can be really effective. Facebook ads are great for your sort of business. And, you know, occasionally people seem to imply that the ads are just easy, you know, follow a few basic principles and off you go. But actually there's real layers to it, isn't there? So you talked about one of the biggest mistakes being not being clear about your targeting and who the ads are aimed at. So what are there kind of 2 or 3 fundamental things that people really should be thinking about or getting in place around that targeting before they get cracking?
Yes, so what I see mainly is people when you go into Facebook Ads Manager and go into your targeting section through the ad creation, there are hundreds of interests that you can choose. So I think it does become very overwhelming, and people they seem to be faced with all of these options. They have no idea which one to choose, so they either choose a million, and then it's so broad that we're not targeting, or I think it confuses them and they can go down the wrong route. So I think if you take the time to really write out who your ideal customer is, but think in terms of social media. So who are they following? What sort of brands do they interact with on social media? So you know that when you're on Facebook or Instagram, you tend to follow people and brands that interest you.
Yeah.
And they're the people and brands that you should be targeting for your audience. So if, for example, mums is a classic one, people go down the route of adding all the Pampers and all the sort of baby brands, but then I say to them, but what age parents are they? If they're teenage, they're probably not following Pampers anymore. So we need to think a bit more about where they are.
Yes, probably following groups about misbehaving kids at that point.
Yeah, or holidays, you know, that's a classic one, I think, for families. Probably following First Choice or someone like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. So to ask you the kind of the ultimate how long is a piece of string question, should you be looking at a bigger audience or a smaller audience? You know, when you're looking at your targeting and Facebook says you can hit 8 million people with this ad.
Yeah.
Is there a sweet spot? Is there a sort of maximum, minimum?
So it is now, it used to be about 1 million, but I think it's grown now. Facebook advised me recently to look at like the 3 million mark.
Okay.
So it's still fairly broad.
It is, yeah.
But then saying that, you can have very niche audiences. You've just got to be careful of audience fatigue. So you'll end up saturating your audience much quicker the smaller it is.
That's the challenge, isn't it? That you want to be specific and not be so broad that you're kind of spamming all sorts of other people. But then, as you say, if you're too small and specific, then you'll get that saturation. And, you know, it's just when you see it 400 times, isn't it?
I think it's better, in a way, it's better to have a big, broad audience that you niche within. So when I say that, you could have parents, but then you can put and must also like, and that can help you to niche down on that huge audience to make it slightly more specific.
That makes sense. You can layer it.
Yes,
now, you also mentioned that often people don't put the right tracking stuff in place, so they're not sure whether their ads are actually working or not. Is there something simple that people should be doing there, or is that quite complicated?
Well, I think it's quite simple, but within Facebook Ads Manager settings, there is a simple tool that allows you to set up Facebook events, which are the piece of code that tracks when someone takes an action. So it is quite simple if you know what you're doing. I suppose.
There's the magic point, isn't it? If you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the easiest step to do is just to map out what your customer journey looks like. So when they click the ad, even just writing it on a piece of paper on a line, when they click the ad, where do they go to? Thank you pages are always really important, because then you can track who has actually completed the action. If they're purchasing products, you know, make sure that you've got your initiate checkout step. And once you've got that written out, it's much easier to then look at the places you need to put the tracking code.
Great. And actually, I think it comes back to one of the things you said earlier is just taking your time and doing it properly, not rushing straight into it, having that clarity, getting all those fundamentals in place, and really taking the time to make sure that you're doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got product-based websites like Shopify or WooCommerce, that will automatically track it as well. Okay. You've just got, and in fact, some people that I speak to have got it set up. They just haven't realised that you can customise your ads manager to actually see the steps. So that's another thing that I work with people on.
Right. Yeah. Understanding what analytics you actually do have.
What they're looking at. Yeah.
Cool. That's great. So now that I've said take your time and be thorough, I'll ask you a couple of questions off a slightly different tangent. one of the things that I see some people do is they mirror successful ads. So they say, one of our competitors is doing this. I can see the ad seems to be getting lots of traction and lots of comments. So we're going to do something quite similar to that. Is that a good plan?
Yes and no. So I do recommend researching industry influencers that are similar to yourself. So you can use the Facebook ads library where you can look up anybody who's running ads and you can have a look at what they're doing. So someone like Amy Porterfield, for example, is very successful. She runs a lot of ads. You can probably get a good idea of what works for her audience. So if you've got a similar audience to somebody else, then that sort of research is quite good. I wouldn't necessarily say copy them, obviously, but inspiration of what's working in their industry is good. However, if you were a sports brand and you looked at Amy Porterfield and copied her ads, it's not necessarily going to work because the audience is totally different and the goal is totally different. So yes, it's you see these Facebook ad swipe files that people advertise. It is useful to see what is working, but you have to take into account what they're offering, who they're targeting. If it's nowhere near what you're doing, it probably isn't going to work for you.
Yeah, funny enough, that was my next question, was about the swipe files, because that looks like a really quick, easy way. But I think what you're saying is that even though some of that stuff, those might look okay, they still don't help you get all the basics in place. And if you haven't got the targeting and the tracking right,
it doesn't matter how good your ad is if you haven't got the basics in place. Like you said, you're still not going to know whether it's worked or not. So
yes, so no shortcuts. Stop aiming for the shortcuts.
Yes.
Okay. So to ask a bit of a controversial question then, why should people involve a Facebook ads manager rather than do it themselves? Because I think there's lots of people that start off perhaps without a budget for a manager or not a very big budget. What's the value in using a Facebook ads manager?
I think having someone who is aware of everything that needs to be set up before you get going saves you a lot of time and money, because the first campaign you run, you're going to be aiming for the goals you're looking for. You're going to be tracking the results properly, all of that business, gathering the data that you need. But also we are aware of what potentially could get you shut down. So I still see people with swearing all over their landing pages and their social media posts, and that's the quickest way to get yourself a black mark through Facebook. And they may just reject your ads, but there's always a risk that they.
So is that if they're swearing in the ads, or is that if you've got swearing just in your normal posts because the link's on your profile?
I think normal posts is okay, although it is still against their policies. But through advertising, you cannot have it. Right. And on your website landing page, you cannot have it either.
Yeah. So swearing in your ads, and if you send them to a landing page.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think an ads manager, a good ads manager, is more of a holistic view. So not only are they looking at the strategy, but they're looking at your website and checking that everything is good there, that your landing page looks like it's going to convert. I wouldn't want to run ads for a client when I can easily see that their landing page is not set up properly, or there's major things looking at me that shows me that they're probably not going to convert. So it's things like that, working with the whole holistic strategy, I suppose. But also I just think that having somebody who has worked with other clients, so we have the experience of what is working and what isn't working. It's like a social media manager. You're more on top of what the trends are at the moment, what's working for your other clients that you can add into their strategy. So it saves you a lot of time and money testing things, because we've done a lot of testing with a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Now, just to be a bit controversial, because I like being a bit controversial, I'm guessing that there are lots of people out there who have worked with a Facebook ads manager, and they've been disappointed. Now, maybe that's somebody who's a bit of a jack of all trades, but I'm also guessing, Alex, that probably quite a few people come to you and maybe are nervous because they've used an ads manager in the past and they've been disappointed. So can you share what tends to be the disappointment for people, or what's been missing? Because what I'm waffling, but what I'm trying to get at is, what should people be looking for in a good ads manager, or what's missing in one that doesn't really deliver?
So I think having something that I know I do a little bit differently, well, something that my clients tell me I do a little bit differently, so I don't actually know whether other people do it or not, is I take a bit more of a long-term view of their business strategy. So rather than just saying, what do we want to achieve from this one campaign, we're looking at what the bigger goal is for their business, so that we're essentially working towards that bigger goal. So then if the first time you run ads, you're not getting the lead cost you're looking for, that's not necessarily the be all and end all to the campaign. At least we've still increased the email list, for example.
Yes.
Other things that I hear about are ads managers who then outsource all of the work to somebody else, and who then doesn't manage the ads as well as they would have liked. And then the client feels like they're in there all the time checking on the ads themselves, and almost telling the ads manager, have you noticed that the lead cost has skyrocketed?
Yes.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. So what kind of questions could somebody ask to try and, get under the skin of a potential ads manager to find out who's a good one and who is perhaps dabbling, shall we say, and not quite got the depth of knowledge?
I think what experience they've had. So how many years have they been doing it? What industries have they worked with? Can they give you any example of results they've achieved for other clients? Have they done any training programs, for example? Are they complete self-taught, or are they member of any communities as well, so that they're on hand to other people who can help if there's an issue, which I think is really important. I'm just trying to think what else really. Do they have any other qualifications? So have they got copywriting experience, or what level of service are they offering? Are they just literally offering to manage your ads, or are they going to create all the ads for you and write all the ads for you? Are they going to work with you on your ideal client? Are they going to do all the tech, or are you still expected to do all of that tracking?
Yeah, so actually get super clear on exactly what is being delivered.
Yeah,
that makes absolute sense. So you talked there a little bit about copywriting. So how important is the copywriting in terms of how successful an ad is likely to be? Because I'm guessing that in a lot of cases, what happens is somebody focuses on a gorgeous image, a great bit of copy, and then they probably forget all that stuff in the background. But still, the actual physical ad is what people see. So how important is that copy?
It's very, very important. And in fact, it's more important now than it was in the last couple of years, with the changes that Facebook have seen with the Apple update. And it used to be a lot easier and cheaper to get results from Facebook ads. Now we've got to work a bit harder, and we're going back to how it used to be, where you had to really write a good ad to attract people to what it is you're offering.
Okay. So do you have any super simple tips? And I know this is another massive question, really. I'm making it over simple. On just copy tips. So long copy, really short copy, questions, testimonials. What are the kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of copy?
So it all depends where your ad is in the customer journey for all of those things. So if they've never heard of you and you're at the top of the funnel, then there's a bit more work you've got to do there to introduce the problem and the solution that you're offering, because someone maybe is not aware of their problem, or they are aware of the problem but not the solution. So you have to think a bit more about that.
You're building at that point, you're building trust, building credibility, giving people that chance to get to know you.
Yes.
So a bit more in-depth copy at that point.
Yeah, so I would test long copy and short copy at that point. Facebook have now put in a limit of characters.
Okay.
And they don't stop you from adding long copy. They just put a warning to say that people may not click on this ad if the copy is too long.
Right.
So I think just test, and also think about if it's Facebook or Instagram, because Instagram does have a character limit.
Okay, yeah.
Some things won't show on Instagram if it's too long. Testimonials are amazing for ads. More at the sort of bottom of funnel level, maybe middle of funnel, when people have already seen what it is you're offering but perhaps haven't quite converted.
Yeah.
So you're covering some objections there. Although I have seen top of funnel ads work really well with a testimonial, especially a video testimonial.
Ah, okay.
So especially for products, if you can get somebody straight away with a video showing how somebody really did well with a product, you're more likely to get a sale from that.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's just the classic copywriting structures, really, the AIDA, which is attention, interest, desire, and action. So if you can structure your copy in that way, the attention is a bit more like a headline. So you can think a bit more like tabloid headlines, how people grab your attention on a magazine front cover, for example.
Yeah.
And things like emojis, like test if your audience is the sort of audience that reacts to emojis, they can be really useful to grab attention as well.
Yes, that's a great shout. I'm a big fan of emojis, definitely. They certainly grab my attention. So you also touched there on video. So just thinking about the ad image, I guess there's an obvious thing about any tips on that, because I know we've always had this thing about if you've got too many words or too much text on there. So are there any really obvious tips that people, or mistakes that people might be making around the image, and any kind of general tips on what creates a great image?
Something that I do see, I mean, this again is testing, but a lot of people will have an image, and on the text on the image, they say what they are offering. So, for example, I don't know, can't think now, amazing shoes or something like that. But what is a good thing to test is the benefit that you're delivering rather than the actual thing you're offering, because that can grab people's attention a bit more, especially if they're aware of the problem that they're facing.
Yeah.
So comfortable, award-winning comfortable heels or something like that, rather than, or you'll never take your heels off to go dancing. Something like the big benefit that's going to catch their attention.
Lovely new red heels.
Yeah,
I get it.
So that's your value proposition. So testing that against, I mean, for things like free webinars, I do find that if you have the name of the webinar, that can draw people's attention to it.
Yeah.
And then for video, I think short videos are performing really well at the moment. So reels, actually a reel type video, can do really well because they are quite attention grabbing.
When you say short, are you literally talking 15 to 30 seconds there?
Yeah, anything up to a minute, I would say. So even for webinars as well, like an invitation video where you're talking directly to your audience, inviting them to the webinar.
Yeah.
People are quite lazy. They don't really want to have to read lots of copy. So if you can deliver them the invitation with captions on a video,
make my life
easy. Well.
Yeah.
But again, it's what your audience is like.
Yes.
So think about who they are.
Any kind of howlers, any obvious mistakes that you think that people make with images?
Just random stock images that make no sense whatsoever. Yeah. I think that we are bombarded in our news feeds with images at the moment that I think you've really got to stand out from the feed. And if your image is just totally random, people are just going to scroll past it. So images of you looking into the camera are good. They've always been a historical good performing ad.
And an image like that, I think I've just squished you. I've just put my crawl up, Alex, and I've completely masked your face. You didn't practice that bit beforehand at all. So just an image of you, but if that's an image of you that has no text on it and no sort of graphics at all, can that still be effective, or do we need to kind of canva them up a little bit and at least put a?
I have had ads that have been effective that have just been a picture of the client, a really eye-catching picture just of their face.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I would definitely test it.
And I think that would be reassuring for people, because I think all the, how do you get all this creative stuff right? I'm going to hide that just so you can back it, Alex. But I think it's good to know for people that some of this can be quite simple, that not every single level of it has to be really complicated. I guess the overwhelming thing coming out here, though, Alex, is planning and prep, isn't it? And if you're winging it and you're rushing into it and you're just doing I've got that workshop next Friday that I could do with selling a few more places for, then actually you've probably missed the boat already. In fact, that does make me think about timings. And I suppose if people are promoting things like events, how early should they be doing the planning, the prep and the research, and how early should they start to advertise, do you think?
Well, for events, I mean, it depends what sort of event, doesn't it? Like, people start advertising 6 months before, like seeding adverts for early bird tickets and things like that. So that's definitely about your strategy of selling your event. And then you add in the ad campaigns along the way. But I would say sort of 2 to 3 weeks, really. You don't want to be too last minute with an event or a challenge or a webinar, because people have got their calendars filled up already. So if you're doing it that week, Facebook haven't even got much time to get to grips with who they're delivering the ads to either. You'll find that you'll just start to get results and then you'll be switching them off.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks minimum, I would say. I quite like a 3-week window, because it gives you an extra week just to do a sort of a bit of a rapid test, really.
Yeah. So you've mentioned something really interesting there as well about Facebook getting to understand your audience and working things out for you a little bit. And I guess there's also people that perhaps run ads and, after 2 or 3 days, they say, well, these aren't working, so they pull them. But is there a minimum period that you should be planning to run your ads over? And is there almost a bedding in period that you need to just sort of stomach before you start to then see traction?
So, well, minimum, like I said, really, 2 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
You could do them in a week, but it just depends how much budget you've got, I would say. If it's a small budget, they're not going to go out to many people. The bedding in period, I would say 48 hours, really.
Okay.
You want to just wait and see what happens.
Yes.
I mean, Facebook ultimately is an algorithm, so it takes its time to find the people who are reacting to your ads in a positive way, and then it starts delivering it to more people who are similar to that person.
Right. And I think that's perhaps something that a lot of people are missing, is that idea, because I think people expect to stick the ads out there and see immediate results, and nothing's worked within 24 or 48 hours, then people think the ad doesn't work. But as you say, that's the period where Facebook are just analysing everything, and then they will adapt it so that to hit the right people.
And with that, I would say, I mean, it sort of adds on to the creative discussion. I would always test sort of 3 ads together as well, and allow Facebook to send out the 3 of them, and then it will gradually choose the one that it feels is performing the best, probably in terms of who's engaging with it. You might not be getting the results yet, but it's interesting then to see.
That's really good to know, though, isn't it, that you actually, your best plan is to test 3 ads, or certainly 2 ads if you can't quite afford 3, and Facebook will actually give you the data as to which one's working best. Fantastic. So Alex, as always, we have managed to fill up 30 minutes in a little flash. We have got a few people watching. Everyone's been very quiet today. Nobody's asked us anything. But if anybody does have any questions, whether they're right now or if you watch back on replay and you've got any questions, please feel free to pop those in the comments, and I'm sure that Alex will come back and answer them for you. If people are watching today and you've given them a bit of a prod about the 8,000 things they think they need to work on their Facebook ads, and they realise they need a bit more help, what kind of things do you have to offer, and what's the best way for people to get hold of you, Alex?
So the best thing that I sort of offer really is my power hour, which is, as it says on the tin, a 1 hour strategy session really, and I can pretty much cover anything that you're struggling with. But what I recommend is when you book it, I just ask you to tell me all the things you're struggling with, and then I pick the priority thing out of that I feel would be the best. Some people end up booking a couple more, and we cover a few different things. I do have a free guide on my website, which my website's alexplatt.co.uk, and that's 5 secrets to better Facebook and Instagram ad results. Perfect. So that covers my top 5 things to check really before running ads. And I'm probably more active on Instagram, although I'm not doing anything at the moment this week. But generally I am more active on Instagram.
During short weeks, everything just goes out the window, doesn't it? And interestingly, so Kelly's been loitering and lingering this morning, lurking. And Kelly says the free guide is fab, and she's really enjoyed this morning. Thank you for all the tips. So that is ace. So hopefully we have been live this morning on Facebook and on LinkedIn. We have definitely been live on LinkedIn because I'm watching it over here. We might be live on YouTube as well, so we'll head over and find that out. But thank you for everybody who's watched us today. As I say, Alex will drop in the various links into the comments so you can catch up on all of those. And please, if you have any additional questions, please keep adding those in, and she will very happily answer them. But yeah, a big thank you for everybody. Now you can go away and enjoy your Fridays and ease your way into the weekend, and hopefully you've all got a lovely weekend planned. So thank you, Alex, for being a brilliant guest as always. I know people get absolutely tons of value from all the tips that you share. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me, Alex. Just thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, folks. Goodbye.
Bye.